Okay, so like I said, we got a lot to catch up on. I haven't really been on the bike for about a month and a half, and I brought it in for a 30K service, and basically almost at 15,000 miles for the year. We did a lot of camping off of the motorcycle, and so there's a lot to discuss. But I want to start, and I think I'll limit this first conversation just to the service, the 30K service, and my experience with a 2019. Wait, what the hell year is this? This is a 2021. Oh, man, it's early. So it's a 2021 Ultra Limited, and I got it the first day that it hit the floor on the Harley dealership. So that was January 19th of last year. All right, so last year I put about almost 15,000 miles on it, and then this year I'm going to put another 15. So we're at 30 over the course of 2 years. All right, so let's talk about a number of things. The first one I want to talk about is the overall performance of the mechanics, the engine, and things like that of the motorcycle. All right, so I've taken the bike in multiple times for service at the dealership, so that I'm covered under warranty. I want to make sure if they find anything, it gets fixed right away, so that there's no issues down the road. All right, I have done some of the maintenance myself as far as oil changes, fluid changes, checking the tension of the clutch. It's a cable clutch. They went back to that, and so the regular stuff that it's fairly easy to do. So on the 30K, they replaced the spark plugs, which was a big indicator for me to determine how the engine was doing, because I wanted to see what the carbon looked like on that. And I'll show you a picture eventually when we get to that point. The 30K was a bigger one for me, and wanted to see how things were going for the motorcycle. All right, so let me talk about the things that have gone wrong with the powertrain, things like that. So it's had a recall just recently, and that recall was just a software update. Apparently the brake light had a tendency on some vehicles to stay on, confusing motorists behind and increasing the chance of an accident. So it was a safety issue that needed to be repaired, and so I got it in that same week that it came out. In fact, I got it in before they actually sent me a letter, so I was ahead of the game there, but just by a few days. So then the next thing was there was some work done under warranty, and that was specifically around a gasket internally in the primary, and that was, it was the shift link seal, something like that. Anyway, I'll write it down what it actually says in the work order. So there was so that's it really as far as the warranty issues are concerned. That's really, that's not it. So we also had a problem with one of the wheels. There was the front tire kept losing air, and basically there was they did an analysis and they found that the wheel itself was off spec, and so they replaced that as well. Cost me $50 as part of my part of the warranty deal. So anyway, but it was all wrapped up as part of like the 10K service or something like that. So so other than those three things, this bike has done great for 30K as far as the powertrain is concerned. Got the oil changed regularly, and it doesn't get dark. It probably could extend it, but I maintain the service, oil change, fluid change according to the user manual. So sticking with that to maintain the warranty. Now, in theory, normally my warranty expires in January, but when I bought the bike, I extended it by an additional 2 years. So I'm going to continue to put miles on the bike and see what breaks, and then get it covered by warranties. Anyway, as you know, as I mentioned, I'm almost at 30K, and so the goal is to keep putting on those miles. Hopefully by the time the warranty expires, I'm somewhere around 60 to 75,000. It would be great if I was in 100,000, and let's see what ends up happening at that point. But regardless of that, I figured that starting year 3 is when stuff would really start to show up as far as needing for warranty repair and things like that. So stay tuned. All right, we'll keep you informed as time goes. All right, so that's the powertrain. Let's talk about the things like the suspension, things like the mirrors, the seat, the racks, anything got loose, anything fall apart, any of that other stuff, right? And the answer is no. The only issue that I have that's not related to the powertrain that is functional on the bike is the lid for the gas tank. You're supposed to push the button and it's supposed to spring up. Yeah, I'm nitpicking here, but it doesn't. So you got to actually dig your fingernail in there and open it up, and that's a real pain in the butt. But haven't had any problems with the handlebars, haven't had any problems with the mirrors, haven't had any problems with the seat. I've got 2 different seats, a low and a regular, and I've just been using the regular 90% of the time. And then, we ride 2 up, and so that the passenger, so the seat gets a lot of pressure, a lot of butt time. But it's all held up. There is some rubbing on the tour pack when you open and close it between the backrest and the actual box itself, the tour pack. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like. That has been rubbing, and you can see that there's it's not necessarily wear and tear, but it is obviously friction. It is something that needs to, eventually could cause some problems, but right now, it's fine. It's totally fine. It functions correctly, everything. The saddlebags, they work great. There's no issues with the locking mechanisms. There's no issue with storage capacity. There's the shocks. As I mentioned in previous vlogs, that I had the front forks and the rear suspensions replaced. On the back, that was from day one at the dealership, and so it's covered under warranty as well. So if something goes wrong, then don't have to worry about it. But we did Legend Revo A's in the back, and we did shorts, the lows, I should say, like the ultra limited low. I bought, and they installed those front forks from a low into this bike. My inseam is 30 inches, and so I needed just about an inch to come down. I talk about that in another video, but how I lowered the bike for somebody who's shorter than average, or not necessarily for my age group, but short. All right, not intended for this bike. Let's just say it that way. Anyway, so the shocks have been great. Would I do it again? So the shocks in the back, the Revo A's are the shorter ones, 12 inches. So they're supposed to be compressed down to 11 and a half when I'm sitting on them. And the stock ones, I believe, are 13. So that's an extra inch. When we're fully loaded, so myself, my wife, all of our camping gear for 4,000 plus miles, we do bottom out. All right, and so if I had to do it again, I've come to the decision I would probably leave it on all the original stuff on as far as the front forks are concerned, I would still replace the back shocks, because the OEM parts for the shocks are just never good, right? They're never good. We all know that. They know that. So we, replace the back shocks. But I would do it with the regular length shocks, because 90% of the time when I'm riding, it's 2 up, and we've got stuff in the vehicle, on the bike, that weighs it down, and so I don't have an issue with putting my feet flat on the ground, and I don't have an issue with being able to control the bike in stops and things like that, stay steady, all that stuff. So I know that if I had an extra inch on the shocks, I could still be handling it fine. So I would probably not lower it if you're doing a lot of long distance riding. It's just not worth it. But for a day-to-day, like what I'm doing now with there's nobody on the back, the shocks work great. No complaints as far as the height, no complaints regarding lowering, and even with nothing on the bike except for myself, I can still almost touch the ground. The heels can almost touch the ground. So so it works out great if you're riding solo and you've got some stuff, not packed to the gills, right? So, okay, so let me talk a little bit about the front windshield, since we're still talking about all the standard stuff that's on the bike. I would, because I ride 2 up, one of the things we're noticing is that the back passenger still gets just too much wind. So I think it's kind of important to extend the height of the windshield. Now, again, I'm shorter in stature, and I have to get like this. I have to scrunch down about 3 inches in order to get my eyes into the windshield. And so I've got plenty of room on top of the windshield, so I could add another inch to the top of that, the lip of that, and still not have any obstruction of view. So that's something that I would suggest doing if you're going to buy one of these bikes and you're going to do a long distance ride, because and you got a passenger up back. It doesn't bother me right now. I mean, this entire 2 years, I haven't had any real wind buffering from the wind from the front. I've had it from the sides as usual, right? Actually, that's a good point too. So I'll talk about that here in a second. But the wind from the front, not a problem. Wind from the side, let's talk about that real quick. So, because it's a heavier bike, you still get blown around. We were in, but it's not always dangerous, right? You'll feel it. The bike will move based on the gusts of the wind, but it powers through pretty well. Now, we have the limits. There are limits. So we've been in 2 really windy environments. One was on the way back from Daytona, so it was through Texas back to Colorado Springs. So it went through was it Abilene? No, yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, so we were coming back on I can't even remember. Anyway, we're on the northern part of the highway. So what, 40, I guess? Anyway, northern part of Texas. So we were going through. We were coming up from Louisiana through the top and then across, and it was just crazy windy. It was pretty much 40 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts up. Well, 30 to 40 was sustained winds up with gusts up to 60, I think is what it was. And so we were riding sometimes with the sustained winds like that on the highway, and it was constantly pushing us over, and trucks were rolling by and we were getting knocked around, but it was physically exhausting. I'm not gonna lie, it was absolutely exhausting. However, it was manageable. I mean, we never got pushed out of our lane. It felt like we were going to multiple times, but it never happened. All right, so the heavier bike definitely makes it safer in those faster winds. Now, we do have, like I said, there is a limit. We were riding down south from Colorado Springs. We were going to, where were we going? We were going to go to the Grand Canyon. That's what we were going to do. We were going to go down to Arizona. We're going to visit my folks. We were going up to the Grand Canyon, so we were heading south. And we were heading south on I-25. And I-25 had the sustained winds were 50 to 60 miles an hour. That was a bear. No lie. That was pretty difficult. Sustained winds at 50 to 60. Yeah, so anyway, 50 to 60 mile an hour sustained winds. And it was difficult keeping the bike on the road. But once we got past Pueblo, almost to the Rye turnoff, for those that in Colorado, doesn't matter, right? Anyway, so on the southern quarter, the last quarter of Colorado, if you're heading south, the winds were 90 miles an hour in gusts. And at one point in that area, it's known for crazy winds. And at one point, we basically had to stop. Everybody had to pull over and stop. And so here I am, me and the wife, with all the stuff, all the camping gear, everything. We were huddled under an overpass. I was sitting on the bike having to hold it because the wind was going this way, and I had it on the kickstand, and it was still trying to come off with this kickstand. And so I had to put my weight on it and keep it over until it started to slow down. We had vehicles, trucks falling over. In fact, right behind us, like a quarter mile behind us, another truck fell over and blocked the entire road. And so there was no traffic coming through. Again, we were all at a stop, just all stopped. Probably a dozen cars all hanging out underneath that underpass, just squeezing in. Anyway, so we were there for about half an hour sitting in that underpass while the wind was just killing everything, just knocking stuff over, and probably injuries for the drivers, obviously, but it was exhausting. And so finally I saw some motorcyclists coming northbound. I was like, okay, that's my cue that it's safe enough for us to ride. Got back on the bike, took off again with no traffic behind us because the truck was still blocking us. And we went all the way to almost about 50 miles short of the border, and then we took a hard right towards the west. Right? Yeah, we went west, hard right to west to go through basically the Four Corners area, because the road all the way, I-25 all the way down to Albuquerque was still, guts up to 90 miles an hour. And so we needed to find an alternate route that was a little bit, with some coverage. And if you've been out there, there's still not much coverage, but at least we were riding in the same direction as the wind, and we didn't feel it as bad. And eventually by that evening, it was petering out, and we made it into New Mexico for the night just fine. The whole point in all of that is that, yes, the bike is better, can handle better in high winds than a lighter bike, but there are limits. At 50 to 60 miles an hour, you're exhausting yourself, and at 90 miles an hour, you can still ride, but you're really risking injury and accidents. So so there's that as far as the wind is concerned. So that's the windshield and how the bike handles in the wind. All right, so let's talk about the entertainment center. That's a pain in my ass, I'm not gonna lie. God, man. So it's got CarPlay, and I bought the WIM module to plug in, and I have a small iPhone 6 SE little guy that actually fits in that little cubby, And I got a little extender for the phone, that so I can plug in the phone to the cable that's in there that connects to the entertainment center. And then I have my helmet that has the Bluetooth that will connect to the bike. So I've got all the components that are set, that are perfectly aligned to do the Bluetooth iPhone CarPlay. I got it all. It all works, but it doesn't always work. So just for clarity's sake, you have to have the helmet turned on. You have to have the phone turned on. In my case, I have to unlock the phone in order for it to play CarPlay, even though in the setup it says do CarPlay even when it's locked. Doesn't matter. It still won't do it. I have to unlock it. And then once all that's set up, and I've got it, all the pieces turned on, the entertainment center, the helmet, the phone, doesn't always work, right? And I'll unplug it, and I'll plug it back in, and I'll unplug it, and I'll plug it back in, trying to get it to recognize. And, it takes multiple times sometimes to even recognize it. And then so I've got it running. Eventually I can get it going most of the time. And then I'll be riding, and then when I come to a stop, I'll turn off the bike, get gas or whatever. I'll turn on the bike. CarPlay is still running. I'll start the bike. CarPlay turns off. Then I gotta go through that whole thing again about messing with the phone to get it to connect. Sometimes I gotta reset the helmet. It's just a pain in the butt. And so now I don't even really use it unless I absolutely have to. I don't do CarPlay anymore because I did CarPlay for the Waze app because, it tells you where the cops are, which means people are going to be slowing down. But it tells you where things are that are on the road. And that, for me, is a big one. If I can know that there's going to be a brick or something in my lane or on the road, then I want to know, right? I want to know. And so Waze has been something that I've tried to get working every time I'm on a long distance ride. But every time I turn the bike off and every time I turn it back on, and I have to go through that song and dance, and it just drives me nuts. So so most of the time I don't even use it anymore, even though I bought the WIM module and I have the right phone, and man, it's just a pain. And so the infotainment center, as far as the CarPlay is concerned, pain in my butt. There's other options too. I haven't tried, basically a remote, basically there's a little thing you can buy, little Bluetooth receiver that will connect in there, so I can take the phone and put it in my pocket, use my real phone, and then just have the real phone connect to that hotspot, as it were, and then connect in. And I heard that works pretty well. I don't know, right? Spend another $50, $100 on something just in case it works or doesn't work. But I still just use the map and the radio, and the I still have the phone connected, so it still plays the music. So there's that. At least it's something, right? So, but the speakers work great. I would suggest if you're really into that and you're listening to the speakers on the road, you upgrade it, because it's 250 watts, and I think you can upgrade to like 650. I would do that, but tooling around the town and things like that, it works great. Can't really complain. Speakers in the back, speakers in the front, solid. So thumbs up on that, on the sound. You can upgrade it, of course. I'm not interested in upgrading, especially with the 6 speakers, the 2 in the saddleback, because we use every inch in that saddleback. Definitely. Oh, wow! It actually stopped. Never stop at this light. Okay. So let's see what else. So let me talk about upgrades. Upgrades next. I do not have highway pegs. I'm an idiot. I'll tell you that right now. I'm a complete idiot. I should have highway pegs. But I don't. I've ridden 30,000 miles on this bike with no highway pegs, and I regret it. Almost resent it. Resent myself, my past self, for not doing it. So I've identified the ones that I want. They're lower profile. They connect underneath the floorboards. So they're not mounted to the crash bars, because that's where the lower fairings are, and the lower fairings have the water cooling in there. So so that's all taken up. So I'm going to mount them underneath the floorboards, and then they'll kick up, and they're not supposed to impact the ability to turn and lean and all that stuff. Nothing should be impacted, but I still haven't done it, right? And I've gone on 1,000, 1,500 mile trips in a day or two, right? So and then 4,000 mile trips to the West Coast, and 4,000 miles to the Florida coast, and so I definitely have put some miles on this thing in long distances, and it's been difficult, not having those highway pegs. So don't have them. You should get them. I don't know why I don't, other than being lazy and priorities and all that other stuff. Then the other upgrade that I don't have that I should have is a backrest. Get that. I feel it. Trust me, I feel it. The good thing with these bikes is they do have back massagers, but only when the wife is on. So it's not like the bikes are really that well designed for supporting your lower back. I mean, the seat's got a little bit of a lip. It helps, I guess, a little bit compared to a flat seat, which I used to ride. But get a backrest. Look like an old geezer. Just go for it. Don't care. Whatever. You'll thank me. I would thank me if I did it, but I haven't. So, and this is not the way. Am I going to breakfast? Yeah, I guess I'm going to breakfast. So let's see, other add-ons. So I got some leather pouches that I put in front of the saddlebags, the panniers. Those are great. Those are absolutely great. It's got, one's got room for a water bottle, the other one's got room for my droid, anyway, it's got room for other things like electronics so we use those, and we always have something in them all the time, for sure. So just a little bit of extra storage space, definitely helpful. And then, speaking of storage space, I also have a little extra room on the little pouches on the lower fairings that hold some stuff too. In fact, one of them holds a battery pack for the one of the cameras on the actual crash bar by the lower fairing, and so but it also holds my remotes for the garage and the gate, and medicine and roll of quarters, stuff like that, right? So just the little stuff that I need access to on a regular basis, it's there. Another thing that I did is I bought the 3-pouch windshield attachment. So the idea is that it can hold my sunglasses, which I never put in there because they too have batteries for the GoPros, right? And so I covered that in a video about how I set up my video feed and for vlogs and just riding and stuff like that. All right, so those are the add-ons that I've bought. Did I do anything else? I think that's it. So that's that part. All right, so let's talk about some things that that I've learned. Okay, let's do that. So things I've learned on the motorcycle over the last 30,000 miles. Tires are precious. I've gone through I'm on my third set of tires, and you put on the miles, you burn through the tires, right? At one point, nobody could get tires, and it impacted my ability to ride because I was getting low. I knew I was getting low. I was starting to see the wear lines, the replacement marks, and there was no promise on when they would have new ones in. And eventually they got them. I put them on, and I was able to resume. So that's probably why I'm not at 15,000 for the year right now, because of that. The other one was brakes. I had to replace the brake pads. There's always those gaps, right, to let the dust get pulled through, right? And you could barely fit a couple hairs into that gap. They were getting that low, and so I had to that's why I haven't ridden for the last month and a half, is because I was pushing it on the brakes. I'd check them. I knew I was getting low, and I kept checking them, and I'd go for shorter runs, but I couldn't do anything long for sure. So that was probably the bigger impact than the tires, not having access to the tires. Just for those, if you're watching this years from now, what we had in 2021 and 2022 is a problem with supply chain, and so there were no parts for anything, right? And you couldn't get anything replaced. One YouTuber ended up burning through his clutch cable, and it took him months, from what I remember, to be able to get a replacement. I think they finally took one off of the show floor bike and put it on his, just to get him back up and running again, because they didn't know when they were going to get a new cable. So, and the way the cables work now, it's not a two-piece system, it's a single system, and so you have to replace the whole thing. Anyway, so we had a problem with supplies for the last couple of years. It feels like it's finally getting better. I'm going to skip breakfast. I'm going to take the back route to Pueblo. All right. Things I've learned, right? So brakes got basically the 30,000 miles. The brake pads did. The tires, talked about the tires. So I'm gonna talk about weather, and I'm going to talk about seasons and riding in different seasons here in a minute. But let me just talk about a couple other things, lessons that I've learned long distance motorcycle riding, and that is wet weather gear. All right. So one of the challenges that I've always struggled with is leather enough, right? So I've got, what I wear is I wear my vest, I wear my jacket. I usually wear chaps because if the engine gets hot, it protects me from the heat. If it gets wet, it rains, then it protects me from that. Even though I've got lower fairings, man, rocks will still find my shins. God, it hurts too. So the chaps definitely take the brunt of most of that. If I'm doing shorter runs, I'll forego the chaps, but most of the time I wear the chaps. So if it's going to rain, the question has always been, I'm full-faced helmet, I'm wearing leather on leather, and I'm wearing leather on my jeans, and then I've got leather gloves, so I should be, according to some people, I should be fine for wet weather gear, for wet weather situations. I will say that's 90% true. A typical scenario like one I experienced is I went to San Diego not too long ago, a few months ago, and went to San Diego, and we went through Albuquerque, and Albuquerque was wet. We were getting rained on pretty much 6 hours on the highway. So basically, we went south from Colorado Springs. As soon as we got into New Mexico, it started drizzling. It cleared up in a couple times, but once we hit the I-40, to connect into Albuquerque, we went straight south to Madrid, and then we hit 40 to go into Albuquerque. And basically, as soon as we got on 40, it just started raining, right? And rain, right? And it pretty much did that for the rest of the night. We got in late into, I don't remember where. We got late into the edge of New Mexico, so, so we were getting a lot of rain, and we were pretty wet. But every time it stopped, the riding, we would get dried off. It would, basically the wind would evaporate the moisture on the leather. Right now, my jeans, they were still wet. Right, they're not leather pants. They're so they're just chaps. Right, so we all know that they're not pants, they're chaps. So there's not full coverage, which is fine. And even that would dry out. It was so it was so bad. The rain was so bad that I could feel it dripping down my leg, and then all the way down to the boots, right, and getting into my socks. And so, I mean, we were getting a deluge, because when we were going through Albuquerque and it was raining on us, we were doing it. It was during rush hour, and we weren't moving very fast, and so it was coming straight down on us, right? And so my pants were soaked from the waist all the way down to the boots, right? And but by the time we actually stopped for dinner, like at 8 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night, whenever, anyway, so by then it had stopped for about an hour or something. I was dry, and so it will wick, and it works. That worked great, right? The next day we were dry. Any extra moisture that was in the leather was pulled out. So if you're dealing with even a full day of rain, as long as you're staying warm, you got layers, right? And then, or it's warm enough that you don't really get, hypothermia or anything like that, then it's fine. The leather is fine when it's wet, and it will dry out, and it'll be perfectly okay. We went to, let's talk about the exceptions. So we went up to the Pacific Northwest, and we went in June. I thought June would be fine. It was not fine. As soon as we got into the hills of Seattle, as soon as we hit the hills, going up and over into Seattle, it rained on us. Constant heavy rain. And we were there in the Northwest for 4 days. We went to Seattle. We went to Vancouver, Washington, and then we went down to the Pacific Coast Highway, and we went down all that way down to Southern California, close to LA, not into LA. All right. Anyway, so we were, for 4 days, we were stuck in continuous rain. And 4 days continuous rain, and we could not get dry. We could not get dry. We would change our clothes, right? But we still had to put on wet leather, and that was miserable. And so we called it the Great Wettening, and that was our limit. Basically, if it's 2 days of continuous rain, put your damn wet weather suit on, because it'll make a difference. Once we did that, it helped stay a little bit warmer. It kept the leather from getting oversaturated. It was pretty saturated, trust me. And so now the wife put on the gear right away. I did not, because I tough it out. I can do this. I was also very curious. Lesson learned. If it's just a one day, you don't have to put your wet weather gear on unless it's cold. You don't want to be doing that in the cold. Otherwise, if it's going to be longer than a day, you've got an extended rain forecast, put the gear on. Just look like a nerd and do it, right? And it'll make a difference. And then the other lesson learned on that was, you know, put the little hat on before you put the helmet on, right? Wife did that, I did not, and she'd have to dump the water out of the collection, out of the hood thing, you know, multiple times, whatever. It wasn't that bad, but you know, it was noticeable. So there's that. You know, I was going to talk about weather here in a minute. Yeah, let me go ahead and roll into that. So, FLHTK Ultra Limited comes standard with heated grips here in Colorado. So right now, today, I don't have them on. But when I took it in for the service, it was 20 degrees outside, and oh my God, I couldn't feel my fingers even with that thing turned on. That's not saying that it doesn't work. It works fantastic. You crank that thing up, it's hot to touch. But it can really get cold even with that thing running when you're going, and I was only doing, 40 miles an hour from the dealership back to the house. It was miserable. But if you're going to be riding, my floor is it has to be warmer than 40 degrees. And even then it's not pleasant at all. What I like it is at 50 degrees or warmer before I go riding. But if you have to do the 40s, you know, keep all your vents closed, layer up, and make sure you have heated grips. They're invaluable. I've worn them. I've used them even when it's like 70 degrees and, you know, you're doing the highway miles and doing 90 miles an hour. It can get just a little cold. I mean, I got this big fairing, right? And it's supposed to block the wind somewhat. It does better than other bikes that I've had, but it's still, the wind still gets to you, right? So heated grips is a big deal in cold weather. Other cold weather stuff, you know, it's the simple things, right? When you're going 70 miles an hour, the wind chill comes into effect, right? You can lose 20 plus miles easily, or 20 degrees easily. So, you know, a 70 degree day can be a 50 degree day. And a 65 degree day can be a, 45 degree day. So, you know, plan for that. Plan for 20 degrees below what the current weather is. So right now, even though it's going to be in the 50s, I can tell you what it is here in a second. Well, no, I'm not going to do that now because we're about to mess with the curves and come to a stop. Anyway, so I always, like right now I'm wearing thermal underwear, wool socks, always wear wool socks. I've got the chaps on, which help keep warm. I've got, you know, the two jackets on. I have the helmet on, which helps reduce the airflow and keep me warmer. And then I've got my my hoodie in the side in case it gets bad, because right now I'm just doing 50 to 60 mile an hour riding, but on I-25 coming back north towards the later part of the night, it might get chilly, so I'm going to have that. So pretend, you know, you're 20 degrees, 30 degrees colder than what it really is out there, and dress accordingly. Big turn. And then so that's the cold side of the equation, which happens a lot here in Colorado. You know, my house, the Colorado Springs, my house is at 6,000 feet, a little higher. You'll go up to 10,000 feet, 9,000 feet easy on these mountain roads, right? And so even in the summertime, you're going to be losing some heat. It's going to get colder up there, and so you always prepare for a cold ride here in Colorado for sure. Even if it's in June, July, it doesn't matter. I have seen it snow on Pikes Peak in July. Not lying, man. You got to be prepared for that. So I'm always prepared for cold weather here in Colorado. Even when I go anywhere else, I'm always just assuming it's going to be cold, just because I've gotten beaten up from it so much over the years that I just always assume it's going to be too cold. Hey, what is that? Looks like somebody might be doing a motorcycle cage. I don't remember anything going on. Must be just somebody who owns it locally. All right, so that's the cold side. Let's talk about the hot side. So folks live in Tucson, and we ride down there throughout the year, even in the hot parts, right? It's been 100. We went to Seattle. I went to Seattle. When was that? Was that this year? No, I think it was last year. Went to Seattle, and they had that whole heat dome thing, right? And it was like 103 degrees, just the standing, air. It was just, it was miserable. And at that temperature, you cannot go fast enough to cool off. All you're doing is getting the heater blown in your face, right? And so there's nothing you can do to cool off. I'm not fully prepared for the hot weather on the bike. So let's talk about what I do on the bike to deal with that. So lower fairings, there's little vents, you open them up, it helps. Then there's a vent in the front that you can never close. You can modify what you're wearing. I still wear leather, all the gear all the time kind of guy, whatever. And then so I'm still getting baked, but I have learned that I will wear my chaps in the heat, even if it's 100 degrees. I found that out, is that if it's 100 degrees, then the engine is even hotter, right? It always is, but it gets to the point where the my lower half of my leg around the calf muscle just bakes, absolutely bakes. It's, oh God, the heat is ridiculous. So I was in Seattle going through this heat dome thing, right? And just trying to get as much air, soaking my t-shirt with water, and keeping the jacket open so the air can get in. And I was like, I'm just too hot, so I took off my chaps. I had to pull over at the next gas station and put the chaps right back on because the engine was baking me, absolutely baking me. I mean, literally. And I put my leg up on the, I don't have highway pegs, as I mentioned, like an idiot, but I put my legs up on the on the lower fairing on the top, right, just to get it away from the heat. And that was really uncomfortable because I'm not really bendy. Anyway, so haven't really figured out the best configuration for that. Now, me and my buddy went to San Diego, and it was 100 degrees, pretty damn close, like 90 degrees, 100 degrees on the way there through Texas, and through Arizona, through Arizona, and we went along the southern border. Obviously San Diego's on the south, and there's two ways you can go, and we decided to go on the most southern route because I wanted to see the wall, and I could barely see the wall. I mean, the road wasn't that close to it, but anyway, so we were baking, and he had one of those vests that have the little gels in it, little bits of gel in there that will absorb moisture, and he wore that even on top of his jacket, and it made a big difference. So they also have seats that will produce some air, little AC thing. I don't think really works. It's just a fan that can break, right? One more thing to break down kind of thing. So I don't do that. I just suffer. I think I get an early start, and that's the thing that I always do. As soon as the light is up, or even before the light is up, if I can get that first hour before the sun comes up and I can be on the road, that's where I want to be, right? Because you got just enough light to see on the road, and you can go, and you don't start baking until around noon, right? So you can get a good 6 hours of riding in before you even get to the point where you start becoming miserable. But you're still going to be miserable, right? And so that's what I learned. I don't have it figured out yet. That's what I learned. So I'll continue to figure that out, right? And if you have any suggestions, please, for the love of God, put them down there in the comment section. Like I said, I'm killing myself in the summertime. I still do it, right? I can power through it. I learned, I was in the military, in the Army, and, stationed in Texas for 6 out of the 8 years. And you just power through. You learn to power through. Just deal with it. But I don't like to deal with it, so I'm not in the Army anymore. I don't have to do it. So if you have any suggestions, please, please, please let me know. I'm trying to figure out a better way to fight the heat. Could just be that I have to suck it up. If that's the case, tell me that I just need to suck it up, all right? So, but anything that can mitigate that heat would be helpful. Okay, so that's the heat and the cold. Everything else in between, nobody even gives a crap about, because that's just beautiful writing. All right, so let's talk about, the next thing is two-up writing, and then we'll talk about two-up writing and camping. This is a long video. All right, so two-up writing. As I mentioned before, the wind is a problem. It buffers up against the wife's head, and she has to deal with it. She hates it, but she puts up with it. She's a trooper. Let me talk about that. So this is how much of a trooper she is that we were coming back from Tucson one time, and so I'm a member of the Iron Butt Association, right? And they do long distance rides, and my wife has never done an iron butt with me, but she can get a certificate for sitting on the back of the bike. For their minimum is 1,000-mile rides, right? That's the minimum, standard minimum. There are some exceptions, but whatever, 1,000 miles, right? And that's the Saddle Sore 1000. And the way they recognize it, you don't have to be the person riding you don't have to be the person steering the bike. You have to be the pilot. You can be sitting in the back, and still it's 1,000 miles, and it's still exhausting, and it's still a workout, and you have more gas stops and all that other stuff, and it's harder as a result. And so they recognized a long time ago that if you're a passenger, in fact, they even have categories in their real Iron Butt rally for two-up riders, right? That they are a distinct riding class. Anyway, so she's never been on an Iron Butt. We've gone 600 miles in a shot before, easy, multiple times. I think one time we went 800 miles together, which was absolutely miserable. I don't want to get into that one. That was a Daytona ride down there. Oh God, that was terrifying. Anyway, but she's never done 1,000 miles, and in a day, within 24 hours, on a motorcycle, right? On any motorcycle. So, two-up. Let's talk about that. So, two-up riding. We did the 1,000 miles. We did it, and I asked her how she felt, and she said it's great. She said, she was comfortable the entire time for the whole 1,000 miles, and we even stopped and had dinner, and and it was late and all that other stuff, and she actually enjoyed it. She says it was more entertaining than sitting, watching TV. She would rather be on the bike for 1,000 miles than sitting in front of a TV all day, which is what we do when we're at my folks' house. They're older, mobility is an issue. Anyway, so she loved it. She absolutely loved it, and she was fine with doing it again. We're going to go in 2023. Our goal is to go East Coast this time, do our traveling that way, and there's a possibility that we'll do 1,000 miles to my brother-in-law, and then another opportunity when we're up there, up in Virginia, go all the way up to Bade. So there's going to be some longer rides, and she's totally comfortable with it, even if it's up to 1,000 miles. We did the 1,000 miles in 18 hours, but that's also because we stopped and had dinner with our daughter, our youngest one, for an hour and a half, at a steak place, right? So, so I mean, overall, two-up riding on this thing is fantastic. She has no complaints. It doesn't bother me as far as weight is concerned. You do have to adjust. Right? Your turns aren't as sharp. I always have her get off before I park the bike because, you know, maneuvering it's a little bit kind of a pain. It's just a different bike. It's a completely different bike when you have two people on it than one. So just be aware of that. Don't ride it like it's a single passenger vehicle when there's two up. But other than that, no complaints other than wind buffering, which we'll hopefully fix this next year with the windshield. Yeah, so two-up riding's great. So let's talk about two-up riding and camping. All right, so 2022 was the year of I want to motorcycle camp. I want to see what that's like. Is it viable? Is it enjoyable? Right? And you know, we're older, right? I'm 57, and so camping is a little bit more difficult, a little bit more taxing physically. But we had all our gear on the bike. I'll go over it really quickly. I'm not a brand whore. I don't care about that shit, right? You get what it works for you. But here were my requirements: is that it had to be able to fit on the bike, right? And so I didn't want a big, you know, 8-person Walmart tent that's, you know, like 4 feet in length and all that other crap, right? I'm exaggerating, but you get it. Try to strap that down on the bike. Everything had to work on the bike, and I had to meet the weight requirements for the tour pack, and on top of the tour pack, I'm very risk adverse, right? And so there are stipulated weight limits for the tour pack and for on top, right? And I made sure we were under those numbers. So it had to fit on the bike, and it had to be lightweight, right? And those means that it's cost, right? So the cost got driven up. Some of that stuff we already had. We, you know, backpack here in Colorado. I haven't been for a while, getting older, but we have the gear that you take on a 4-season camping trip, backpacking trip up into the mountains, which means lightweight, right? And it has to fit into a backpack. And so we had I will throw out some brands, but we had a Marmot 4-season tent, and the reason why we took that was because it was a 30-person tent, but the footprint is still, you know, pretty decent as far as size is concerned. And when I mean footprint, I don't mean the floor of it. I guess I could. It's still a 3-person tent, but I meant that when packaged up all together, it didn't really have a real impact to weight or to space. The tent we kept in the waterproof bag on top because I wanted easy access to that. So you pull in, if it's raining, which it was in the Pacific Northwest, you know, you want to be able to pull that stuff out, set up a tent, and be able to put your stuff straight into that tent without it getting soaked. So I didn't want to open up the tour pack, have everything get soaked. But so it was a 4-season tent. The reason why it's 4-season is because we knew we were going to go to Sturgis, and we knew that the winds there are insane. Not last year, 2 years ago when we went, 2021. The wind was so bad that all the tents were getting blown around. The ones that weren't were the dome ones, and you know, and then that were secured down correctly, right? And so the 4-season Marmot tents are designed for extreme weather, Arctic weather, stuff like that. So we went with that bike simply because we knew that as soon as we got to Sturgis, we ran the risk of it getting blown away. This year that wasn't a problem. I won't get into it, but we stayed at the Buffalo Chip. We were under trees. The wind never really got that crazy out there this year, so I think we were lucky. So anyway, so there's that part. Then we originally had mats for the floor, right? And I changed that out to cots, because when we went to Arizona and we camped up at the Grand Canyon, I hurt the next day, all right? It was hard flat, even though I had an air mattress and a foam pad on top of that. It just didn't work out for my old bones. And so we replaced that with cots, and that worked out great. We had 30-degree bags, which means 40 to 50 degrees, right? And so they probably took up the most space, because they were, even though they were down, we ended up going down because we needed the space, right? Which drives up the cost. And then, we had our clothes, and we actually brought freeze-dried food in case we needed it. In a couple cases we did, especially out in, so we stayed at Yellowstone, and then it worked out great there. And then we also stayed at the KOA at Devil's Tower, right? Devil's Tower KOA, and that was cool, no doubt. But that's all in the middle of nowhere, right? And they have a little shopette and stuff like that. But we just did our mountain house, and it worked out great. And then so we had the food, we had the tent, we had the cots, we had what else did we have? So there was the sleeping bags, there was the food. I think that's kind of it, and then our own clothes and our DOP kit, our toiletries, and all that fit. All of it fit. Somehow all of that fit. Now, we would go with minimal clothes, so because we were going to Sturgis on that trip, I brought just 2 t-shirts and quarters for the laundry facility, and I brought laundry pods. That was a mistake. You can buy Tide pouch, a laundry detergent in a pouch for travel. Do that. It works better. The pods will just want to try to disintegrate, and so you keep them in a Ziploc, and then they're all sticky on the inside, and throw the Ziploc bag in there to get as much of this. Yeah, it's just weird. And then, but that allowed us to, all that allowed us to do camping on the bike. And again, like I said, this was the 30K, for the year of 2022, just to see how it would all work out. We did it all year. And we did it on the Pacific Coast Highway. We did it, like I said, in Sturgis and Yellowstone, and we went down to Grand Canyon, and so we did it all over the place. And it worked great. Next, though, the Marmot tent is too low. You have to crawl in and crawl out, and it's tough. It's tougher, right? So I would like to find a tent that I can walk into that takes up very little room, but at least a 3-season, right? So the quest continues, and then lessons learned on that. You can do all of it. You can do all of your traveling and all of your overnights in campgrounds. The ones in California and Oregon are phenomenal. Highly recommend them. The KOAs, they're available. There's only, the ones we've enjoyed were in New Mexico, Arizona. There was one, I'm trying to remember where that was, but yeah, maybe 3 or 4 KOAs that we've stayed at for camping, we've enjoyed. The rest of them, like one guy was, yelling in his tent just randomly, and you could smell crack. So we relocated that time, and that was in California, near San Francisco. The pool was disgusting there at the one in San Francisco. My credit card got hacked or got compromised when I bought the stay in San Francisco. So, I mean, at the KOA there. So, yeah, very disappointed in that part of it. But otherwise, and the expense. I mean, you're not really. So you go to a national park or a state park or just in the national forest area, you know, the most you're spending is $27, right? And that's for hookup and all this other stuff. When we stayed at KOA, we're spending $50, right? And it's like, why are we doing this for an extra $50, you know, or more? We could be staying in a hotel. And in fact, that's what we ended up doing in some cases, is that it just didn't make sense for us to find a camp spot when it was going to be just as expensive and certainly not as comfortable as a hotel room. So, yeah. So just be flexible, I guess, is my point. If you cannot stay in, so there's Sumig State Park in California was off the charts. Fantastic, great place. We absolutely loved it. I would intentionally go there again to that park just to get to that park. Right, it was fantastic, and it would cost us like $27 or something like that. Really friendly people, beautiful area. Absolutely worth it. So yes, you can absolutely camp off of your motorcycle 2-up. You're going to pay a little extra to make sure that you're under the weight requirements that they stipulate. If you don't care, that's on you. I don't recommend it because you're already top heavy, and wind can be a factor at that point, and you just don't want to play around with that shit. So 100% you can camp, and you can do 2-up camping on a motorcycle. I've got videos throughout my video list that talks about that, so feel free to ask any questions that you might have in the comment section, but there's a lot of that material already available that I go over a lot of that stuff. So, okay. So summary. Let's talk about summary. So, we upgraded this bike from a Heritage Classic, which we rode 2-up all around Colorado, and I had a great time doing it. But we started pushing our miles more and more past the 200 to 300 miles in a day. Obviously, we were hitting 400, and then our obvious real goal was like 500-600 miles. And so we needed a better bike. And so when we upgraded this one, there was questions. It's a heavier bike, a lot heavier bike, by a couple hundred pounds. Then it has more storage, which means even more weight on the bike, right? And so was it worth it? And was it the right thing to do? And for the kind of riding that we wanted to do, which again was long distance, vacation type riding, 15,000 plus miles in a year kind of a thing. And the answer wholeheartedly is yes. Are there better bikes? Could be, right? I mean, a lot of people say go with the Goldwing. My wife has looked at them and she thinks that they're too light because she's had to deal with the winds, right? And it feels like the winds are going to push her off, and she just feels more comfortable in a heavier bike now by a lot, right? And so she said no pretty quickly to looking at Goldwings, right? So within the Harley-Davidson line, is there a better bike? I mean, you could do CVO, right? A bigger engine. Gas mileage is going to impact you, right? Also, you don't want to necessarily upgrade, stage 2 with a, with a cam change, because that can increase your gas consumption, right? So, pretty much go stock as much as you can with that in order to make sure you're efficient as possible, fuel efficient as possible. We'll talk about that here in half a second. So continuing on the summary. So is it worth it to upgrade? Absolutely. Is it handle the miles? Absolutely. Does it work great with 2-up? Absolutely. Has there been maintenance problems? Not really. It's a more complex bike, a lot more electronics, right? So, wrenching on it is still possible. Just be aware that there are some limitations. Camping, you can absolutely camp on it. You could do a full-time camping on it, even 2-up. You're just going to have to make sure you're underweight and everything fits correctly, and you're not getting, drag and all that other stuff. And then gas miles, right? Mileage. So I get about 40 miles to the gallon on average. My range varies between, depending on variances, right? Weight and wind and things like that. How often you stop and how much highway traffic versus going through cities. I'll get the ranges anywhere between 260 to 320. 6-gallon tank. You can do the math. So sometimes I get a lot more than 40 miles to the gallon, but we only go about 200 miles at a time at a stretch, so that we can get up, walk around, get the blood flowing, prevent blood clots, that fun stuff, right? And so the gas mileage is solid, except when you go to California and you're on the Pacific Coast Highway and you have to pay $10 a gallon. Yes, I had to do that. $9.99, 0.9, right? So that sucked, but whatever. Still better than driving the Hummer. So gas mileage, 40 plus miles per the gallon. The cruise control is absolutely essential and works great. The acceleration, even it's a 114, which is an upgrade, right? But they have a 117 and they have a 131. The 114 works great. We keep it as stock as possible. One for warranty, and 2 because there's a rule I learned. Somebody told me a long time ago, is that if you want reliability, just keep it as stock as possible, because it's the non-stock things that start shaking loose and cause you problems. And I have friends that live that, even though they swear by stock sucks, right? So but they like to wrench, so they wrench, and they have to more than I do. So in summary, I guess we can finally wrap this up. In summary, fantastic bike. It's served me well. 30,000 miles in 2 years is no issues. I think the engine's handling great. I don't think there's a whole lot of carbon buildup. There hasn't been a whole lot of issues with it as far as warranty problems. There are some things that you'll want to adjust for comfort, which I highlighted. Other than that, I think it's not a bargain, but it's an absolute essential if you're going to be doing any real long distance riding. It just makes a world of difference, comfort-wise, distance-wise, everything. It's obviously designed for long distance, so you might as well get the bike that's designed for the distance if you're going to be doing the distance. All right, so that's it. If you have any, like I said, if you have any comments, please put them below. I'm still trying to figure out some issues, especially around the weather, the heat. So if you have anything around that, great. Let me know your experiences too, because I'm still, 30,000 miles in my mind is still kind of breaking it in. I mean, for a lot of people, that's a lot of miles, but the reality is that I want to get this thing to 100,000 miles, and I want it, to work great the entire time. So if there's anything I need to be heading off, any repairs I need to be doing, let me know, so that I can get ahead of it, so that I can keep this thing running at tip-top shape as long as I can. All right, with that, please subscribe. Like I said, make sure you leave comments below, and appreciate it. You guys have a safe one, and I'll see you on the next video. Later.